Hey everyone. Uh, so uh, so I wanted to. I've been wanting to make this video for a while. Um, a lot's been going on, and every time I sit and I talk about this topic, I get angry. I start swearing. I start, pacing back and forth. So I've tried this a couple of times, and I just end up losing my shit. So I'm gonna try this. I'm sitting down, and I'm not walking around the streets like I usually do. So I'm gonna try to get this thought out without getting too frustrated. So, um, so I want to talk about uh, the conversation touches on a few different topics, and basically it's about voting, how I vote. I wanted to give my perspective on what informs my vote as a Canadian citizen. All right. So as a little bit of background, I am male, uh, Muslim, Muslim man, whatever, however you want to call that. And I'm just going to go into a little bit of detail about the Muslim, just because I think it's important, just in terms of my perspective. So I'm a Sunni Muslim, which is a sect of Islam. And within Sunniism or Sunni, I don't know the proper term, but within that sect, there is a particular school of thought that I come from, with like from my lineage or however you want to say it. So I'm a very specific type of Muslim, is what I'm trying to say, and it's within the Sunni um, branch of Islam. So this is where my opinion is coming from. And I am a born and raised Canadian, so this is my country, right? So I am a Canadian Muslim, right? And I'm going to talk about um, my political leanings as a Canadian Muslim, because I think a lot of people, a lot of Muslims, and a lot of I'm gonna try to stick with Muslims just because uh, because it's kind of like my people, like so I can talk about my community, if you will. So 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 my voting, so what informs my vote, or um I my vote usually falls under uh like you know there's different words that you could use to describe it. So some of the words that I hear and that I can kind of relate to are liberalism, or liberal, or progressive, left wing ideology. Um, I would say progressive ideology, um, and basically this kind of thinking. And if you want to use a new age term, woke ideology. So woke is the one that is triggering most people right now. So I'm going to go ahead and attempt to define woke, because a lot of people who are talking about it, they don't understand it at all, and they can't even. And let's talk about, and I'm going to specifically pick on um, the conservative leader in our country at the moment, Pierre Poilievre. I think that's how you pronounce his name. I'm just going to call him Pierre for this video. So, because Pierre's been pushing this anti-woke agenda, and and when he pushes anti-woke agenda, he's coming after people like me, and that's why this is a personal issue for me, which is why I think I need to speak up, because he's coming after the ideologies and and that's and he's vilifying these ideologies. So and he's getting a lot of people um, on this bandwagon, right? Because it serves his political goals. Now, I'm going to explain to you what makes me woke. So I've been meaning to make this video actually, or explain this for a while now, for a few months, and I was just kind of waiting for the American elections to happen and kind of see where things are kind of headed, even though it was kind of clear where things are headed, and now it seems like things are headed in a similar direction in my country. So, and we have an opportunity here to to not go the same route as our neighbors down south. And that's really my my motive, I think, here. So, because things in this country have really gotten to a point where um, it's become intolerant. It's become uh, just generally negative, you know. And I wanted to speak to this because it's not sustainable. No one wants to keep hearing this shit. And a lot of people on the right can't shut up about it because they don't understand it, and they the only thing they do understand is their own side. And this is what I'm trying to pick at, because you can't just vote based on yourself in a democracy, okay? And that's what Canada is, a democracy. And that is what we are proud of in this country. All right. So, so let me back up a bit, and we're going to talk about wokeism and what woke actually means. Because you ask Pierre, and this guy can't give you a straight answer, and he can't because he doesn't know. And he doesn't know, and there's a reason why he doesn't know too, is because I'm gonna call him out. He ain't Canadian, man. He is not. He is not. Oh, sorry, my bathroom just made a strange noise. Um, so this guy ain't Canadian. Um, and and it's very clear right now to see who is and who isn't, because this country is under attack. Act is an under active attack as of right now from the United States of America. And if if and that's just a fact. So when a country is attacked and when its people are attacked, you're first off you're not just you're attacking the people, right? So 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 we need to be on the same side when we are being attacked from an external source, from a foreign source. All right? You can talk about all the shit you want between parties and all that stuff, and why this person's wrong and why you're right. But when it comes to uh, nationalism and, and like standing up for your country, we all need to get in line, and kind of you need to get in line, right? And so that we can be a unit, right? Because that's the only way we are going to um, fend off the attack. We can't fend it off if we aren't a unit, right? And this is why, it, like you guys know what's going on. I'm going to try to stay out of American politics and just speak about what's going on in this country, because I don't got that much time. And even this, I feel like I never would have imagined I would have to actually voice these things, because, people don't really talk about politics, religion, these kinds of things are usually just, you mind your own business, you do you, and you kind of keep things to yourself. And and let that inform the choices you make in your vote. So, but things have gotten to a point where there's so much fear mongering that's being spread by the Conservative Party that it's really time to for sane Canadians to speak up about the the predatory um, way in which the Conservatives are moving right now. And this is this is more of a criticism of the current Conservative Party, so specifically with Pierre in charge. Because in terms of ideologies, there's, I understand conservatism, I understand liberalism, and, these things have their own place within the political spectrum. So, it's there is a validity within the core basic tenets of conservatism. But what you see right now in the Conservative Party is not conservatism, and that's the distinction that I want to make. Um, so I'm not going to get too much into the conservatism tenets because I'm not conservative. Um, uh, I'm not a conservative voter. So I may have a conservative lifestyle because Muslim people are mostly conservative. There's very few that kind of you know leave that conservatism. Uh, but but I think it's important in this country because although I lead a conservative life, I come from a conservative background. Like within I have a traditional household. I grew up in a just like a Muslim household. So you know since I was probably like 10 or 12, I've been fasting every month, every day, every year for a month each year. So it's like what 30 years, past 30 years almost without pause, almost without pause, that I've been, fasting. Uh, there's certain core things like I've read the Quran in Arabic a few times in my life. Um, I don't speak Arabic, I don't understand Arabic, but I've read the Quran in Arabic um, 4 times, front to back, when I was younger. So it's like I do come from a level of uh, religious conservatism, um, and just being also like an immigrant from an immigrant family. There is some conservatism that is kind of baked into that identity as well. Um, so I think so as liberal as I may act or vote or have ideologies, my background is actually conservatism. Um, so yeah, so I think that's worth mentioning. So the thing with the thing and the reason why I vote liberal as a conservative is because first off, there's this thing uh, called the separation of church and state, and it seems like a lot of people are pushing against this idea. And along with the church and state, so I'm a believer in the separation of church and state. And as a Muslim, that translates to the separation of mosque and state. And I also believe in separation of synagogue and state, and of temple and state, and of whichever religion you are, and of the governing body of this country. Okay, so I don't vote based on my religious beliefs. I don't even vote based on my, yeah, so I'll just leave it at that. So to get back to woke, so I pushed out a video a few months ago. It's on my Instagram. I think maybe I recorded it at the end of last year, where I do the anthem in English and French, and then I speak about um, three topics. racism, sexism, and homophobia. And these are things I mentioned in the video that I learned in school, and they help me function in Canadian society. So the reason why I made that video in the first place was so that I can move forward and have a conversation about each of these things. Um, and I had to kind of set the kind of like a base, like a base, so that I can talk about these things. So that video is the base. This is the continuation of that conversation. So I want to talk about all three of these things: racism, sexism, and homophobia. And you know, the thing I want to talk about the most, because I feel like this is the thing that is confusing to a lot of people, and it's being used um, in this fear-mongering campaign against wokeism. So let me explain what wokeism is then. So, so when I was a kid, like yeah, kindergarten, I went to kindergarten, junior kindergarten, um, and then moving forward, junior high, high school, post-secondary. I spent probably like, I don't know, 20 years of my life in the school system, in the public school system and post-secondary education. So I spent a lot of time there. So this is more about my early school years, right? So your primary school years. So junior kindergarten to grade six. So and so so when you're in school, when you're a kid in school, you know, you kind of you're on the playground and you just kind of you just kind of go on your own instincts, right? So you're not told anything about racism or sexism or or homophobia or anything, but the schoolyard is just kind of like a free for all where you kind of encounter these things and you partake in them and all this stuff too. So so for example, when it comes to racism, of course, in Canada, you go to school, you're in school with a bunch of people that you may not have interacted with, or your parents may not have interacted with when they were in their own country. So over here we deal with everybody, right? Everybody from all races, all colors, all backgrounds, and so you're gonna interact in ways that you're not interacting in an informed way. You just kind of interact in the way you feel. So you let your feelings kind of guide you in the thing, and what you like, what you don't like. And of course with kids, it's like, make fun of people who aren't like you, and more familiarity. So you kind of like, stick with people who you're more familiar with. And this is kind of like it kind of plays out in like, cliques in school where, these kind of people stay together, those kind of people stay together. So this is all human nature. So it's not necessarily a condemnation of racists, of sexists, of homophobes. But also we're talking about kids right now. We're not talking about adults because adults can definitely be condemned for all this stuff because you should know better by now. So I'm talking about, when you're a kid when you don't know any better, right? So when I didn't know any better, I was a racist. When I didn't know any better, I was sexist. When I didn't know any better, I was a homophobe. So this is the one thing I think that a lot of people like to think that, oh, they weren't these things, or that it's bad luck, if you call yourself a racist, if you call yourself these things. Even racists don't like being called racists because they're like, oh, we're not being racist, we just hate Indian people, whatever it is. We're not being racist. So, oh, I'm not being Islamophobic, it's just that what I believe, I just have an academic reason for what I for my thoughts, whatever, right? There's always this excuse that I'm not this thing even though this is what I am. These are the thoughts that I'm conveying. So going back to the schools thing. So I was all three of these things. Um, I got sent to the principal's office for a racist for being racist when I was in I think I was like in grade two or three. I said something I shouldn't have. to someone who doesn't look like me. And and I said it because that person um, took something of mine. So I'm not saying that's kind of what led to it, right? So he took something of mine, and I'm very particular about my stuff. So I just let loose, something. I said something I shouldn't have said, and I got called out right away that that's a racist comment, and I got sent to the principal's office. And that's kind of I think one of my first and this is when I was in like grade two, grade two or grade three, not more than grade three, so it might have even been grade one, but I remember it very clearly, and and but this is where these things get caught then, right? That's and I mentioned in my other video that apart from the education, you learn other things in school. And this is one of the things, this is how you learn about racism, for example, because you end up being racist, and then you understand why that's racist, and then you kind of internalize it, and you realize that you treat others the way you would want to be treated, and I would not want uh, people to be racist towards me. So it doesn't make sense for me to be racist towards someone else. And these are the kinds of lessons you learn or you develop, when you're growing up, and especially when you're in an environment where 5 days a week you're in that environment, um, which is great because you learn and then you grow, and that stops becoming an issue because you know better. Same thing with sexism. Like, of course, especially as a guy, I know guys are very sexist towards women or towards anyone who isn't a guy. Um, like this even creeps into homophobia because I would call homophobia kind of a type of sexism. And when I talk about homophobia, I'm basically talking about and when 'cause I'm not talking about just and like being like direct definition wise being scared of homosexuals, right? I'm not going. It's it's not just homosexuality, right? So when I say homophobia, I'm referring to the LGBTQ2SIA plus group of people when I talk about homophobia. So if I just kind of say it, call it all homophobia because it's kind of rooted in this in that same phobia. So 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 this is also kind of and I suspect it's a similar to how women can be sexist as well because obviously this thing isn't just about men. This is about men and women. But I'm going to speak from my perspective, from a male's perspective. So how men are sexist towards women, right? Um, which is which is like I don't have to explain this shit, man. Like this is clear. When you got people saying, get in the kitchen and make me a sandwich, you know, is that's sexist, right? And if you don't get that, and you're an adult and you really have to be sat down and like this basic shit like someone has to actually explain it to you, like that's your failure, man. And this is why I'm making this video, is because a lot of y'all failed, man. Y'all failures. And and these are the ways that you are failing. So so let me get back to it because this is the shit that you know drives me up the wall. So let me get back to the definitions and the ideology. So um So, so that's racism, sexism, like boys versus girls versus boys. Girls have cooties. There's something, or boys clubs versus girls clubs. There's always this thing, blue versus pink. Oh boys, we can't wear pink or whatever. And oh, like back then, obviously when you're a kid, you're just like, oh, girls, you know what it is, right? And and same thing with 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 the homosexual the homophobia, it comes out in in ways where it's like uh, you use words, like especially as a man, calling people gay is an insult, or like sorry, as a boy, when you're a boy, you use these words as an insult, and I grew up when I was like, when I'm talking about the 90s, right? Before the internet, so before, and this is Toronto, this is 90s Toronto, right? So if you were in Canada in the 90s, how kids are like, you call people, F word, and I'm going to say some of these words just, because there's a lot of F words and N words and all that stuff. So I'm just going to be very clear about the kind of terminology that is used because it's important to use a terminology uh, even in a way to identify it as wrong. Like people say fag, right? Fag, faggot. Um, there's uh, Gaylord. Remember Gaylord? Gaylord. What? One of my go-tos. I used to go, and all these things are basically and where these things come from is to attack someone's masculinity, right? And we're doing this when we're in grade one and grade two. I used to, everyone was like, not, I don't know if it was everyone, but, this is kind of almost like um, how boys, kind of, ha you know, uh, how we compete within like amongst each other. And that competition thing, it kind of plays into like the human nature of the situation. So these kinds of words are very normalized when you're a kid, and it's to call someone weak, or if you're a guy and you're calling, you're saying someone throws like a girl, you're saying they're weak, and it's like you are attributing, and it's basically that's what it is, right? It's calling people out as weaknesses. Um, and and you learn these lessons uh and you eventually come to a point where you aren't you aren't triggered by these kinds of accusations, and you don't go towards these kinds of um like these aren't even insults, right? That's what you kind of have to that's what you end up realizing if you get called out enough times or whatever, right? So, or that's the hope, and this is why public school is so important, is so that you get called out on your shit. Because when you're homeschooled, when you just, in your private schools or your, Catholic schools or your Muslim schools or whatever it is, you stay in your bubble and you don't really know how to interact with people outside of that bubble. But so let me get back to the thing. So those are the three things that come up, and these are the things how this is how it comes up, and this is kind of how people then, or I would say how people mature and saying, stop calling people, fags or whatever, and stop using these kinds of words in derogatory ways, or you know, and that's the thing. There's derogatory intent when you say these things, right? So, and that does not have a place in civil society, right? And and it's forgivable again to a certain extent, or at least understandable when you're a kid, when you don't know any better. But when you have passed the age of 16, 18, when you're in your 20s, when you're in your 30s and you still ain't getting it, like, and this is the problem, is that we have 30, 40, 50-year-old men, 60, 70, 80-year-old men who still use these words, right? Because first off, you can't tell these people what to do, right? All of a sudden, it's just a personal thing that like someone's telling you what to do, and that if you do it, then somehow you're you've submitted, and men, or I would say, like boys, uh, adult boys, um, do that, and there ain't nobody around them to tell them, to call them out, and they just go about their lives being ignorant. And it's time to call out this ignorance, because this ignorance is being amplified right now by the Conservative Party in their anti-woke agenda. And and so let me get back to the wokeism then. So so the definition of wokeism then is basically, at its core, people who recognize um, sexism as a problem, racism as a problem, and homophobia as a problem. If you recognize these things as a problem, and what allows you to recognize these as a problem is by putting yourself in other people's shoes, right? And this is how you gain perspective, right? And you understand that other people have their own perspective, right? You realize that, oh, you aren't the only person in the world. Your religion is not the only religion in the world. The world does not revolve around you. So these are all um, core, core um, ideas of being woke, right? And this is basically the root of empathy, right? Because what is empathy? Empathy is, you know, having feelings for someone, like, feeling like if you have empathy for someone, you you recognize that they also have feelings about something, right? So you learn to respect other people's feelings about things, right? So when it comes to I can't, this thing is like 30 minutes already, but that's the problem with this topic, is that I just kind of go on a rant. But I'm going to try to stick with the thing. It's because it might just take an hour to push out. So what else happens once you start to kind of deal with these issues? And and these aren't just like these are issues that are like brought up in school assemblies, right? That the point out racism, don't make fun of people, if they're a different language, if they have different customs, if they have a different religion or whatever. Like, eventually we all need to be able to respect each other, right? To live in a peaceful society, right? So because if we're always trying to hate on someone who's not like us, then we're always going to hate, because people are never going to be all like us, right? And to go back to empathy, I was having a little trouble defining it, but it's the ability to put yourself in other people's shoes, right? That's empathy, right? Effectively. So you need to be able to have empathy. You need to develop it in a certain way, but you can't be a functioning adult without empathy in a multicultural society, right? So if you live in just like, this some village far away where there's only one type of people, and maybe you don't need to have empathy. Maybe you never need, maybe empathy never comes up. You live, you die in your 100 years, and you never interact with someone you know, outside of your village or whatever. And sure, but you aren't living in a village in Canada, so you don't get to use that excuse. Um, so the other thing about wokeism then is it doesn't just stop at sexism, racism, and homophobia. Because once you realize that, oh, there's a lot of different, just because, it starts to open up your mind to other forms of discrimination, right? Because then you get into ideas of ableism, or like body shaming, for example, right? The other popular uh, schoolyard insult is like uh, you make fun of fat kids, for example, right? And you make fun of people's weight, or the skinny kid. I was a skinny kid, and I got picked on for being skinny. But as a child, I used to, call people fat as an insult. And it was me, it was my friends, it was everybody, just like the boys at least who were kind of like competing with each other or whatever. And like lard, double lard, lardo, your mama's so fat. Remember those jokes? You remember how mainstream that shit was? And and it made us laugh, and a lot of this stuff just made us laugh, and it was entertaining, and that's kind of as far as we took it. Even like the just get in the kitchen and make me a sandwich thing. The people who still say it think it's funny, right? And this is kind of where their head's at. So these people don't really have empathy or think about um, other people's perspectives or anything like that. So it's a closed-minded way of thinking. So you start to see that, okay, so you start to look at how you have been treating other people, in general. What it is that you pick on, whether you're picking on someone to have, that has an accent, they're not speaking English right, or if they're, if there's something that you do not necessarily um, relate to, like apart from like the weight thing. The other very clear example is disabilities, right? So when we talk about, like, so you talk about um, the R word. I'll say, retard, for example, right? And then we learn that, that this, and retard and retarded is a great example of this too, because it became like a word that you were not supposed to use anymore because it was insensitive to people with learning disabilities. It's basically an insensitive way of speaking, right? And insensitivity is also, a part of wokeism, right? Because all this stuff is about sensitivity, right? Because if you're not sensitive, then you're not going to sense what you're doing as right or wrong. You're just going to go by what's inside and what you want to do and what you think is right, and that is right. So you're not going to have the ability to 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 pick up information, right? Uh, to get input, not just output, So and this is part of growth, right? You can't grow if you're not taking in information, because growth comes from the outside, being internalized, not just from the internal coming out. So there's like, it's two sides to growth. For a full growth, you can do it. You could be the president of the United States by just doing it one way, but you're going to be disconnected from everyone on the outside, and you aren't going to be able to be that man that you think you are, because a real man, and I'm going to get into a real man later on, because it's time to call people out, because this shit's gone too far, and people are really taking this stuff for granted, and not realizing the damage they're doing to civil society. Um, so that's kind of the motive too, right? So the R word, right? And I'm just gonna call it the R word moving forward, because I don't say it anymore. I used to say it. I used to say, FAG. I used to say all these words, which I do not say anymore, and I haven't said it's in the past 20 years or so, right? We're talking about when I was a kid. We're talking about, primary school. So 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 that's kind of a thing. It's like a lot of people just didn't learn, and but they went past their school age, and then they're in, like, obviously no one's gonna be pointing, like, no one's gonna be teaching them after school. Then you interact with this stuff in your workplaces or whatever, and then you bring your own shit into the workplace, and it just, and you blame other people, and you end up blaming woke people, and you end up blaming, like, people who refuse to say the R word, as if I've capitulated, or as if I'm lesser for not saying this stuff, and this is how they see it. They see it as capitulation, as them submitting, as being told what to do. And this is kind of the core of this, like, of toxic masculinity, right? And this is what we mean by toxic masculinity, is when you are not able to take input, where it's just about the, that right is whatever you think is right. Um, so so yeah, this is why it's a long topic, because it gets into, masculinity. It gets into a lot of topics. I like, talking about sexism. Like, I can talk about feminism, and how triggered some of y'all are of feminists, and you are the ones who are triggered, because these are the same people, and we're talking about, triggered wokeism. These are new words that people are using, and this stuff exists, has always existed, right? Um, so, and wokeism, and let me tell you what wokeism used to be called. And because a lot of this just, I think, is kind of like a political correctness, right? And I am like a politically, like, I'm pro political correctness, and a lot of people, like, in the 90s or whatever, this is what they used to rail against, or used to say, oh, this is the weak people, who are politically correct, or, like, who have to censor themselves or something like that. No, this isn't about self-censorship or anything like that, right? And then, like, people who were politically incorrect was like, oh, this is so daring, and like, oh, I'm the one who's, fighting back, or, like, so it's like, it's just juvenile, so let me get, so that's the thing. It's like you can pick these apart, and then I might just, make different videos about sexism specifically, and racism specifically, and homophobia specifically, because that is how expansive each of these things are, and ableism, and then you get into ageism, and, like, for example, over here, when you, like, so ageism is also something that comes up, and it's uh part of woke, because woke, it's about all of this, all right? It's about all of this, and it's basically, um it's so when you're anti-woke, these are all the things you are against. You are by definition against. And when you talk about woke people, these are the people you're talking about, the people who take the time to put themselves in other people's shoes, and who who learn, who grow, and who move forward, right? And that's the thing. Moving forward is, is part of growth. You know, you can't grow and stay in the same place, right? So 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 this happens over time. Okay, growth happens over time. Moving forward happens over time. Time is also part of it, right? So so right now, kind of a fast forward to current age, like, the past, like, I'll say 5 years or so. In terms of Canadian discourse, um, so I'm going to talk about uh, where I think things went wrong in the public discourse, um, where at least I felt that um, that the ignorant people have been empowered to, they have been validated, and now, you know, since all of them are talking, they're validating each other and creating this echo chamber that makes them feel like, oh yeah, this is how, this is common sense and stuff like that. So it just kind of amplifies their own ignorance. So so the moment that this happened, from my understanding, is when a certain professor at the University of Toronto, um, his name is Jordan Peterson. When this guy decided that he was not going to use, he's not going to address a student by their preferred pronouns. And he stood on his belief, and I think he eventually got kicked out or something. But since then, he's made a career out of his ignorance, because he realized that a lot of people are also ignorant, and it's the ignorance that is becoming popular right now in this country, and it's because of these mouthpieces that ignorance is actually becoming popular. It's because when you have professors, when you have teachers, when you have leaders in your society who can't, who refuse to move forward, who refuse to allow society to move forward, because pronouns. Okay, so I'm going to stop it right here because I feel like I can go off about pronouns. So next time I make a video, we're going to start with pronouns because I don't want to ramble. And it's like 45 minutes of rambling already. So I'll cut this where it is, and we'll talk about pronouns, and we're going to start talking about people. So I mentioned Jordan Peterson. I'm going to mention that guy with a little chin, Andrew Tate. I'm going to talk about uh, that Dan Bilzerian guy. All these red pill guys, all this manosphere shit. Let me say one thing before I cut this video short too. If you subscribe, if you follow Jordan Peterson, if you follow Andrew Tate, and I said Tate before on purpose, just because I'm a funny guy. Andrew Tate, Tate. Um, if you follow Dan Bilzerian, just because he's suddenly talking about pro-Palestine and shit, and you think you think I rock with these guys because you think I rock with Andrew Tate because he's a pro-Palestinian? Like, anyways, different topic. I'll talk about Israel Palestine too, but I wanted to stick with this right now, as you know, it's important to get shit right in this country, so that we can affect change in the places we need to, because this is that serious, and we as a country have failed. We as a people have failed, and we need to get shit in order, back in order, because you know things were pretty good until very recently. Um, and I'm going to describe, you know, where I think, you know, things went wrong a little more, you know, as I go on. And yeah, if you follow this red pill shit, like, man, you are the problem in this country. If you are a man, I'm gonna point this out specifically for men, you know, because I'm a man, and I think the biggest problem in this country is coming from men. Uh, it's not the LGBTQ2SIA plus community. It's not women. It's men who are being triggered by women and who are being snowflakes when it comes to dealing with the LGBTQ2SIA plus community. And you are turning all this fear, all this triggering, all this snowflaking um, into your vote. And you are voting for conservatives because the conservatives are telling you to be afraid, and you're letting them uh, scare you. And if you were a man, you wouldn't let anything scare you. So I'm gonna unwrap that. This is where shit's gone. Where I gotta pull out my man card, uh, and and I should no man should ever feel like they gotta pull their man card out. Uh, to they gotta correct other men, man. It's just this shit's basic. And before I cut this off, and because I started talking about men, and I've been talking about, so let me cut this off on a thing about men. Um, Two things make you a man. All right, boiled down. You can put in a third and a fourth, and you can, but boiled down, uh, a man, the two identities or the two purposes that a man has that define him is protection, protectiveness, to protect yours, to protect your own, and uh, sorry, uh, providing, right? So being protective, being a protector, and being a provider, right? And everything, ab- I think, like I've been, and this is the thing, like this is just, this ain't an agenda, all right? This is just, uh, this is just the facts. So a lot of these things fall under uh, protection and providing. Um, and I'll talk about these two things in a different video when I feel like talking about, you know, being a man. But right now, what's more important is for people to understand what it is, what anti-woke is then, right? Because now that you know what woke is, and you should understand the word choice here too. Woke, awake. Woke comes from awake. What is awake? You know, awake is having your brain turned on, right? Being alive, being open, learning, two-way conversations, growing. This is what woke is. Woke is progress. So when you push anti-woke, you're pushing anti-progress. Okay? So stop hiding behind words that you can't even define and and recognize how you're being played. Because if you're afraid of progress, then then you're afraid of growth. You're afraid of moving forward, and you're afraid. So you ain't a leader, man. You ain't a man. So I'll cut it off right there. Um, and I'll continue from this point in the next video whenever I have the patience to sit down and actually voice these things. So yeah, that's all I have for today. You have a good night. Stay safe and stay woke. All right, peace.